All right, guys. All right, so I think next week, guys, we'll probably start in Genesis part 2. We're probably going to go to Genesis 7. Okay, so this will probably, unless the Lord moves me to do another part in Genesis 6, we're probably going to move on to Genesis 7. So let's read. It says, "Make thee an ark of gopher wood. Rooms shalt thou make in the ark, and shall pitch it within and without with pitch." So God is telling Noah how to what? Build the what? Ark.
Ark.
And look what it says. This is the fashion which thou shalt make it of, right? And so he's going to give him all the details. The length of the ark shall be 300 cubits, the breadth of it 50 cubits, the height of it 30 cubits. A window shalt thou make to the ark, and in a cubit shalt thou finish it above. And the door of the ark shalt thou set in the side thereof, with lower, second, and third story shalt thou make it, right? So this is the what? All these dimensions are the what? The fashion which thou shalt what? Make it of. Now look at the word fashion. It means form or model to be imitated. It is a what? A pattern. So God give him an exact pattern. He give him a model that he expected him to do what? To imitate perfectly, right?
Right.
All right. So, and then he goes on and he says, and of every, he says, I'm sorry. He says, and behold, even I do bring a flood of waters upon the earth to destroy all flesh. When is the breath of life from under the heaven? And everything that is in the earth shall die. Okay? So everything's going to die except the one he's going to make a what with. But with thee, Noah, I will what?
Establishment.
So he's going to make a covenant that everything, every living thing that has breath in the world, it will die. Once this ark is finished, he's going to take them in. He says, and thou shalt what? Come into the ark, thou and thy sons and thy wife and thy sons' wives with thee. And of every living thing of all flesh, 2 of every sort shalt thou bring into the ark to do what? To keep them alive with thee. So God has a covenant. He's only going to spare so many animals so they can replenish each other. He's only going to spare so many human beings that they can replenish the earth. He says, of fowls after their kind, of cattle after their kind, of every creeping thing of the earth after his kind. 2 of every sort shall come into thee to keep them alive. And take thou unto thee all food that is eaten, and thou shalt and thou shalt gather it to thee, and it shall be food for thee and for them. Thus did Noah, according to what? All that God commanded him, so did he. So the exact fashion, the exact way, not just the fashion of the ark, right? Not just the dimensions of the ark, but the exact amount of animals, the exact amount of food, everything that God commanded Noah to do. Guess what he did?
He did.
He did it according to the what? The pattern or the model that God gave him. It's kind of like if you wanted to build a house, right? And you're looking for a builder, what you do is you take the blueprints. You've already decided this is what I want my house to look like, and you give it to the builder, and you expect him to do what? Follow the pattern, right? Yes. This is where the bedrooms are going to be. This is where the bathroom's going to be. This is where the kitchen's going to be. And when you pay him, you expect him to make it exactly like the blueprint or the pattern, right?
Right.
All right. So that's what God did. He gave him he told him, this is the fashion. This is the model. This is the pattern. Now look what it says. We talked about this verse when we first started talking about baptism. He says, for Christ also hath once suffered for sins, the just for the unjust, that he might bring us to God, being put to death in the flesh, but quickened by the Spirit, by which also when his body was dead and in the grave, he went and preached into the spirits in prison, which sometime were disobedient. And who are these spirits that he's preaching to? When these are the ones when once the long suffering of God waited in the what? The days of Noah. These are people that perished in the flood. He says, while in the days of Noah, while the ark was a preparing, wherein few, that is, only 8 souls were what?
Saved.
Were saved. By what? Water. The water is a what? The like figure whereunto even baptism doth also now save us. So whatever this baptism is, and we're going to talk about it soon, guys, because that was the entire purpose of starting these studies. Whatever that baptism is that saves us, it says that this water that saved Noah and the ark was a what? That was the like figure, right? That whatever this baptism is that's going to save us, that is a picture of what the water was that saved what? Those 8 souls were saved by what?
The water.
So this is a figure. Now look what a figure is. The form of anything as expressed by the what? The outline. An image. That which is formed in what? Remember what fashion is? It is a model to be imitated. It's a what? It's a pattern. A figure is the same thing. That which is formed in what? It's a blueprint. It's a pattern. It's a figure of something what? Else. Is the blueprint the actual house?
No.
No. It's just a what? It's kind of an outline. It's a figure of the house, right?
Right.
All right. So, but as it is written, eye hath not seen, nor ear heard, neither hath entered into the heart of man. Look what it says. The things which God hath prepared for them that love him. So listen. Our eyes have not seen, and our ears have not heard, neither have any of these things entered into our hearts, guys, the things which God hath prepared for them that what? Love him. See, God has some things prepared, guys, for us. See, we think, listen, God knows, think about that. God is all powerful. You know that?
Amen.
Is there anything that has power above God?
No.
No. He has all power to do all things. God knows. How much does God know? Does anybody know more than God?
No.
God not only knows the number of hairs on your head, he knows the number of specks of sand in the entire earth. God knows the entire past. God knows everything present. God knows everything future, right? Think about that. God knows and has all power. He is you can go as far as you want to the east or the west or the north and the south, and guess who's going to be there?
God.
God says, if you make your bed in hell, guess who's going to be there?
God.
God is omnipresent.
Amen.
Okay. So, but look what it says. God, eye hath not seen or ear heard or entered into the heart the things which God hath prepared for us, guys, that love him. But God hath what? Revealed them. What's them? The things, right? He's revealed them unto us by his what? Spirit. Because the Spirit does what? Searcheth what? All things, even the things that eye hath not seen nor ear heard. And look what he calls them. These things are the what?
Deep.
The deep things. And that's why we need to understand what we're getting ready to teach on. Because God has given us figures, and God has given us what? Fashions, the way things are fashioned. Now look what he says. He says, for what man knoweth the things of a man, save the spirit of man which is in him? Even so, the things, the deep things of God knoweth no man.
Right.
But the Spirit of God, Spirit of God knows the deep things, but no man knoweth the deep things. So for you to know the deep things, guess how they have to be revealed to you?
Through the Spirit.
Through the Spirit. Now, we have received not the spirit of the world, but the Spirit which is of God. And that is the very Spirit that is going to do what? Reveal those deep things to us.
Right.
We have the Spirit which is of God, that we might know, guess what? The things, the deep things that are freely given to us. Which things, the deep things, also we speak. Look what it says, not in the words which man's wisdom teacheth, but who teaches? And how does he do this? Right, so this is, he just gave us a clue of how to understand what? The what?
Speak things of God.
Yeah, so, and here's how you do it. Comparing what? Spiritual things with spiritual. Now let's look at that word compare. To set or bring things together, in fact, things, right?
Yes.
Deep things, in fact, or in contemplation, and to examine the relations they bear to what?
Each other.
Okay? With a view to ascertain their agreement or disagreement. So you're going to compare two things with one another to see whether they agree or what? That's what comparing spiritual things with spiritual means. In other words, when you compare what you believe about the New Testament with the Old Testament, if it's not going to match up, guess what? Then if what you believe doesn't match up with the picture in the Old Testament, guess what? You believe something that's not true.
Right.
He says to examine the relations of things to each other with a view to discover their relative proportions. In other words, relative means the arguments may be good, but they are not relative to the subject. In other words, remember what we talked about last week, guys? Remember we said that we've always believed that when you believe upon Jesus as your Savior, that made you went from being an unbeliever to a what? A believer.
Right.
But when you look at the picture in the Old Testament, the people that put the blood on the door were already what?
Saved.
They were already believers. They were already children of God. So the blood is not for the unbeliever. It's for the who?
Believers.
For the believer. And so that's what we mean. In other words, let me give you a simple picture. Okay. Because we're going to talk about shadows in a minute. If I see a shadow of an elephant, okay, and I believe that that's just a shadow, right? If I believe that that shadow is a giraffe, so I believe my belief is that it's a giraffe. But then I look at the shadow, and the shadow is a shadow of a what? Elephant. Then am I correct about it being a giraffe?
No.
No. And so that is what God has provided the Old Testament for. It is a look at these words. Fashion is a pattern, a figure, right? An outline, that which is formed in resemblance to something else, right? So when you compare, when you say, I believe this based upon the New Testament, and then you compare it to the Old Testament, if it doesn't match up, then what you believe is what?
Wrong.
It's wrong. It's a lie. And that's why we have to understand what the Old Testament's for, so we can compare what we believe against the Old Testament.
Right.
And if the picture doesn't match up, then we need to examine to make sure, because listen, look what it says about something that's relative. The arguments may be good. It's a good argument that if you believe upon Jesus, then you have eternal life and you went from being an unbeliever to a believer. But even though those arguments are good, they are not what? Because we find out in the picture that the people that are in bondage are already what? Children.
Right.
So do you understand that?
Yes.
Okay, I'm gonna give you some more, okay? Even as Sodom and Gomorrah. Now what God's going to do is he's going to make this happen. Did this happen in the Old Testament or the New Testament?
Old Testament.
Old Testament. So this is going to be the shadow. This is going to be the figure. This is going to be the fashion or the pattern, right? Watch. So this is Old Testament. Even as Sodom and Gomorrah and the cities about them in like manner, giving themselves over to fornication and going after strange flesh, are set forth for what?
Example.
An example. They are a picture. They are a shadow, right? Now look at the definition of an example. Guess what? A pattern. That which is proposed to be imitated, right? Precedent or former instance in a bad sense, intended for what? Caution. He give us Sodom and Gomorrah as a pattern of something that's going to, it's a shadow of something that's going to happen in the future, and it's intended for what? For caution, right? He says a person fit to be proposed for a pattern, one whose conduct is worthy of imitation. Instance serving for illustration of a rule or precept or a particular case or proposition illustrating a general rule, position, or truth. Now look what he says. An induction of what may happen from what has what?
Happened.
So Sodom and Gomorrah is the shadow. Even though it really happened, it is a shadow. It is a picture. It is an example. It is a pattern. It is a figure. It is a figure that is to be compared, right? So what do you think he's comparing it to? The second coming of Christ. Everything in the Bible points to guess what event? When Christ comes back and he fixes everything. He fixes the people, he fixes the world, he does away with death, he does away with pain and sickness and all those things, right? So all these are a picture, a pattern, a shadow, right, of what may happen from what has what? What has happened. And it's intended for what? Caution. Look here. Let no man despise thy youth, but be thou what? An example of the believers. In other words, your life and what people can see about you should what? Be an example to other what?
Believers.
And to all people, really, even believers and unbelievers. In other words, your life should be a pattern, not just in word, but in conversation, in charity, in spirit, in faith, in purity. God wants you to be an example, right?
Yes.
And it's intended to show other believers that they need to be cautious, because guess what? Judgment begins where?
House of God.
At the house of God. We must all appear before the judgment seat. It is intended to give them an example. And guess what? When they see your light shining, right, it will make them do something. When they go through a hard time, when they feel like they're not getting fed at church, when they feel like they're a believer, they know they're a believer, but they're lost, he says, be ready always to give a what? An answer. They're going to look to you, because when they look at you, you are a what? Example. The words that come out of your mouth, your charity, your faith, you try to live pure. He says, and look what he tells Timothy. He says, till I come, give attendance to reading, exhortation, and what? Doctrine. That's what we're doing, the truth, right? He says, this is part of being an example too. Neglect not the gift that is in thee, which was given thee by prophecy, with the laying on of the hands of the presbytery. Meditate upon these things. Get what things? What comes out of your mouth, your charity, your faith, your purity, reading, exhortation, doctrine. Look what he says. Give thyself what? Wholly to them, that the profiting may what?
Appear to.
Why is it profiting? Because this is your example. And when people see these things, guess what's it going to do? It's going to bring people to the Lord. He says, take heed unto thyself and unto the doctrine. Continue in them. Continue in what? The doctrine. Because when you do this, you're going to both save who? Yourself and them that what?
You.
Because you are living a what? an example, a pattern. Whose pattern do you think we're living?
God.
Or Christ, right? When he walked upon this earth, we are to have the mind of Christ. We are to walk like he walked. Now look what it says. And as it was in the days of Noah, so shall it be also in the days of what? So he's comparing the second coming of Christ to the days of what?
What?
Noah. Do you know why? Because Noah and the days of Lot, guess what? They are a shadow. They are a pattern. They are an what? Example, right? Because look what he said. Even as Sodom and Gomorrah, they are set forth for what?
Example.
An example. He's letting you know that if you will study Noah, which is in the Old Testament, if you will study Lot, which is in the Old Testament, it is a what? It will give you a picture or a shadow of the second coming of Christ. As it was, so shall it be what? Also. He says, they did eat, they drank, they married wives, they were given in marriage until the day that Noah entered into the ark and the flood came, and guess what? It destroyed, how much of the world, outside of the people that were in the ark, how much of the world was destroyed?
All of it.
All of it. He says, just as it was in the days of Noah, guess what? So there's going to be a picture at the second coming of Christ and the judge when the seventh trump blows, that the ones, the elect that are taken up, they're the only ones that are going to be saved from the destruction of the world. Because God, guess what God's going to do after the seventh trump's over? He's going to finish descending to the earth, and guess what he's going to do to the world?
Destroy it.
He's going to destroy it. He says, likewise, look, just like the flood destroyed everyone except the people in the ark, likewise also as it was in the days of Lot, they did eat, they drank, they bought, they sold, they planted, they built it. But the same day that Lot went out of Sodom, it rained fire and brimstone from heaven. Think about what God did. He sent these angels, and they warned Lot, right?
Right.
He said, we're going to destroy this place tomorrow. Anybody that is in Sodom is going to what? Die. And then they allowed Lot to go out and talk to his sons-in-law who were married to his daughters and say, and what did he tell them? Come out of this place.
Right.
That's a shadow of the second coming of Christ. Because if you're not taken out of this world at the seventh trump, right? Guess what?
Get burned up.
You're going to be destroyed.
Yes.
He says, the same day that Lot went out of Sodom, it rained fire and brimstone from heaven and destroyed them all. Now look what he says. Even thus shall it be in the day when the Son of Man is what?
Redeemed.
Noah, the flood and Noah and the destruction of Sodom and Gomorrah is a picture. It's a pattern. It is a shadow of the second coming of Christ. So if you want to know whether your doctrine, when it concerns prophecy and the second coming of Christ, is true or not true, what do you compare it to? What does God tell you to compare it to? Things that were in the Old Testament, right? If you want to know what the days of the Son of Man are going to be like, guess what? As it was in the days of who? Noah. As it was in the days of Lot. So what we do, this is not going to just concern prophecy, guys. This is every single thing that you believe, that you've been taught since you become a Christian. The way you're going to test it to make sure it's true is, guess what you're going to compare it to? The Old Testament.
Right.
Now, look what he says here. He says, and the Lord spake unto Moses, saying, speak unto the children of Israel that they bring me an offering. Of every man that giveth it willingly with his heart, ye shall take my offering. And this is the offering which ye shall take of them: gold, silver, brass, blue and purple and scarlet and fine linen, goat's hair and ram's skin dyed red, and badger skins and shittim wood, oil for the light, spices for the anointing oil, and for sweet incense, onyx stones and stones to be set in the ephod and in the breastplate. So all of these things are what they're going to use to build the temple, to make the clothes for the Levites, and so what we're beginning to understand is we're going to begin to look at these things, because these were pictures or shadows of what? In other words, this is not, God is trying to show you truth through the Old Testament. Now watch. He says, and let them make me a what? Sanctuary, that I may dwell among them. According to what it says, according to all that I what? After the what? Pattern of the tabernacle and the pattern of all the instruments thereof, even so shall you make it. And so look at this. Let me show you. This is what a pattern is. An original or model proposed for imitation, that which is to be copies or imitated, anything cut or formed into the shape of something to be made what? Pattern. Remember what it was up here? What is what's a figure? An outline. That which is formed in resemblance of something else, right? What is the fashion? A model to be imitated, a pattern. And so therefore, guess what? It's the same thing, isn't it? That's what a pattern is. It's a model. And so God is saying, Moses, he's up in the mountain, and he's giving him a what? A pattern. So when they're going through the wilderness, they're going to build what? The outer courts, and they're going to build the Holy of Holies and the holy place, and they're going to take the showbread, the table for the showbread, and they're going to take the candlestick, and they're going to take all these things, and they're going to put in the temple. Well, guess what all those things are? They're a what? Pattern. And at the end of Exodus 25, in the last verse, look what he says. And look that thou, he's talking to Moses, look that thou make them after their what? Pattern, which was showed thee. God says, you make it exactly, just like Noah built the ark, exactly like God told him to. Guess what he's telling Moses? Make it exactly the way I showed it to you in the mountain.
Right.
Because that pattern is going to be important. You know why? Because you will know if you see a shadow. Let's say Noah builds the ark. If you see a shadow of the ark, what's that shadow a picture of? It's a picture of the ark, right? You can't say, oh, that it's a shadow of the ark, but it's really just a motorboat. It's really just a car. No. The shadow is always going to be a picture of the real thing, isn't it? When you stand out in the sun and you see your shadow, is that a picture of someone else?
Nope.
It's a picture of you. And so for you to know that what you believe about the New Testament is to be true, you look at the shadow. If the shadow is a shadow of an elephant, can it be a giraffe?
No.
No. So your beliefs, God is going to allow you, look what I entitled this, checks and balances in your faith. You can know what you believe to be true or false based upon the Old Testament.
Right.
All right. So let me go back up here. Okay, so where am I at?
What Chip was talking about, he's talking about types and anti-types.
Yeah. Okay, so anyway. So he tells Moses to make the temple and all the instruments and everything after their pattern. Now look what he says in Hebrews in the New Testament. Now of the things which we have spoken, this is the sum. And we know what the sum means, right? 2 + 2 is 4. And 4 is the what? The aggregate of two or more numbers, right? When you put them together, what they add up to. So when you put these things together, we're just trying to come to the sum or the entire truth, right?
Right.
He says, we have such a high priest who is set on the right hand of the throne of majesty in the heavens. Okay, so where's Jesus right now? He's in the third heaven. He's on the right hand of the throne, right? Look what he says, a minister of the what? Now, is it the same sanctuary right here that Moses was built in the wilderness?
It's in heaven, but it's built like that one. It's a
No,
type.
it's the same pattern, right? But it's not that one here in the wilderness was a earthly one, right?
Right.
It says that Christ is the minister of the sanctuary and of the what? That's where the pattern came from.
Right.
That pattern that was in the wilderness, that pattern, remember when Solomon built a temple? That was just a pattern of the true what? Tabernacle, which who pitched?
Lord.
In the third heaven, that's the Lord built that tabernacle,
Yes.
and not who?
Not man.
Not man. And so the one that man built, the one that Moses was given the pattern to, man built that one. Solomon had the pattern. Solomon had that one built. But this one up in heaven is the true tabernacle. It's where the pattern came from. For every high priest is adorned to offer gifts and sacrifices. Wherefore it is a necessity that this man have somewhat also to offer. So let me ask you something before I go on with this. So if you want to know if you want to have an idea of what the temple or what the sanctuary and the true tabernacle in heaven looks like, what do you have to look at? What's the blueprint or the what? So if you look at the Old Testament and you look how Moses built that, and if you look at everything from the way it's built to the instruments that's used in it, to the sacrifices, to how they killed the sacrifice, how they burnt the sacrifice, what they did with the blood, the candlestick, the showbread, the priest could go into the holy place, but the high priest could only go into the most holy place. If you look at all of those things, it will show you New Testament truth.
Right.
You understand that? And if what you believe doesn't match up to the way it was done in the Old Testament, what you believe is a lie. Okay? The Old Testament is how we check to make sure that what we believe is true. Now look and he's going to tell you that, right? Because look what he says. He says, a minister of the sanctuary and of the true tabernacle which the Lord pitched and not man. For every high priest is ordained to offer gifts and sacrifices, wherefore it is of necessity that this man have somewhat also to offer. For if he were on earth, right? Now he's in heaven with the true tabernacle, but if he was on earth, he should not be a what?
Priest.
Seeing that there are priests that offer gifts according to the law. See, they offered gifts according to the law, and they did it on earth. We had priests for that, right? But with the true tabernacle, which is in heaven, we have Christ, who is our high priest. And he doesn't offer gifts according to the law. He says, but look what he says. Those men that are on earth that offer gifts according to the law, who serve unto the what? Example and shadow of what? Pattern. See, that is the pattern of what's really in heaven. They are nothing. If you want to know, they are examples. You go study them and you can determine whether the things that you believe are true or not true. They are the example and shadow of heavenly things, as Moses was admonished of God when he was about to make the tabernacle. For see, saith he, that thou make all things according to the what? Pattern showed to thee in the mount. That thing that they made in the wilderness, those instruments, that tabernacle, Solomon's temple, guess what? They are what? They're examples and they're shadows. Even the law itself For the law having a what? What is a shadow? Look what a shadow is. It is apparent on a plane and representing the form of the what? In other words, it's not the real body, it's a what? It's just a picture of your body, right? It is an imperfect and faint what? Representation. It's not the real thing, but it is a faint picture of if I see my shadow on the ground, it's not me, but it is a faint representation of who? Me.
You.
And so that's what the Old Testament, that's what the law, that's what everything in the Old Testament is for, is a representation of the truth of the New Testament. In other words, look what it says. The law having a shadow of good things to come, and not the, look what it says. It's a shadow. It's not the what? Very image of the thing. It's not the real thing. It's just a shadow of the thing. Of which things? Things to what? Come. That was the shadow. It's not the real thing. The real thing is going to what? To come.
Right.
It said, what it says, it can never, the law can never with those sacrifices, the sacrifices of lambs and bulls and goats, can never with those sacrifices which they offered year to year continually make the comers there into what?
Perfect.
So listen, so when they sacrificed those animals, the shedding of that blood was for the forgiveness of sins, right?
Yes.
But he says that the shedding of the blood of animals cannot make you what?
Perfect.
It's just a shadow. It's just a picture. For then would they have ceased to be offered? Because if the blood back then, if the shadow, the picture, the blood of those animals could make you perfect, they would have quit after the first time. I sacrificed an animal, now I'm perfect. I don't have to keep doing it. And then the worshipers, once they were purged by the blood of those animals, would have no more conscience of sins. But look what he says. In those sacrifices, the animal sacrifices, there is a what? Remembrance again made of sins. How often? Every year. You know why? It is not possible that the blood of bulls and goats should what?
Take place.
It's not possible that the blood of bulls and goats can make the comers what?
Perfect.
It is a what? Shadow of what?
Things to come.
Good things to come, which is a picture of who?
Christ.
The blood of the Lamb, which is Christ. And that's what he's going to say. Look, and every priest standeth daily ministering and offering oftentimes the same sacrifices, talking about the animal sacrifices, which can what? Never take away sins. But this man, talking about Jesus Christ, after he had offered one sacrifice himself for sins, for what? Ever. So that one sacrifice did not have to be repeated every what?
Every year.
See, this was when he says up here that these animal sacrifices were a shadow of what? Good things to come. They were talking about Christ.
Right.
He says, look, this man, he offered himself one sacrifice for sins forever. He sat down on the right hand of God from henceforth, expecting till his enemies be made his footstool. For by one offering, that's his body, he offered himself, he hath what?
Perfected.
Perfected forever them that are sanctified. What was the problem with the blood of these bulls and goats? They couldn't make you what?
Perfect.
They were just a shadow of something good to come, which can make you what?
Perfect.
Perfect. So do you see that if you don't believe you as a believer can be made perfect, if you believe, oh, all my sins are forgiven, I got nothing to worry about, if you believe that, oh, nobody can be perfect. Nobody can overcome sin, right? That's just who we are. You're no different than the 10 spies who discouraged the people from taking the land.
Right.
We're to exhort one another We're to contend for the faith. We're to seek the kingdom with all our heart, and to believe that God, by that one offering, hath what? Perfected forever them that are sanctified, that are cleansed, that are made holy. Look what he says. Let no man therefore judge you in meat, or in drink, or in respect of a holy day, or of the new moon, or of Sabbath days. You know why? Because meat, drink, respect of a holy day, the new moon, the Sabbath days, which are a what?
Shadow.
They're a shadow. That seventh day Sabbath is a shadow of something to what?
Come.
Because God, what did he do on the seventh day? He created everything in 6 days and then what? Then did what?
Rested.
Rested. Do you know that is nothing but a what?
Shadow.
A shadow. So watch this. Beloved, be not ignorant of what?
This.
Listen, you want to be ignorant? You can be ignorant about a lot of things, guys. But you had best not be ignorant about this what?
One thing.
One day is with the Lord as what?
1,000 years.
And 1,000 years is one day. So what is God telling us? He's like, well, in 6 days I did all my work, and on the seventh day I what?
Rested.
Rested. Therefore, if one day is 1,000 years, guess what God's going to do after 6,000 years? He's going to rest, right?
Yes.
So that rest after 6,000 years, the 7,000th year is going to be the seventh day, right? Don't be ignorant of that.
Right.
So after 6, and guess where we're close to? We're almost at the end of 6,000 years since Adam. And guess what God's going to do on that day? He's going to rest. Look what he says here. Believer, guess what I want you to do? Remember this and show yourselves men. Look what he said. Remember this, bring it again to what? Mind. Remind yourself of it. Always remember this. Oh, you transgressors, remember the former things of old. What's he talking about? The Old Testament. Think about it. Remember all the things of old.
Right.
For I am God and there is none else. I am God and there is none like me. Look what he says. Remember this. Bring it to mind. Remember the former things. Declaring the end from the what?
Beginning.
So you want to know what the end of the world is going to be like? It's going to be like the what?
Beginning.
The beginning. And what did God do in the beginning? He created everything in what? 6 days, and he rested on the what?
7.
If you want to know what the end's going to be like, you declare the end from the beginning, and from ancient times, the things that are not yet done. So after 6,000 years, there's going to be a seventh day, which is 1,000 years, and it is going to be a day of what? What did God do on the seventh day?
Rested.
That 7,000, that millennial kingdom, that 1,000-year kingdom is going to be a day of rest.
Right.
Don't be ignorant of that what? Be not ignorant of this one thing. Now look, because that's what he says. On the seventh day, God ended his work which he had made, and he rested on the seventh day. For in 6 days the Lord made heaven and earth, the sea, and all that is in them, and rested the seventh day. So that is a shadow, guys, because it's in the what? Old Testament. We need to make sure our beliefs match up with the what? The pattern of the Old Testament.
Yes.
Okay, so that's what we're going to do. Do what we believe in the kingdom, does it match up with the pattern in the Old Testament? What he says. What he says in Hebrews. Wherefore, as the Holy Ghost saith, today, he's talking to believers. Now listen, guys, he's talking to you, Carlos, you, Patricia, you, John, you, Love, and me. If you will hear his voice, remember, what happens when you don't listen?
Yeah.
If you hear his, as in the provocation, does anybody know why it calls the time in the wilderness? Because what did they do? They provoked him, right, to anger. Because every time Every time they would complain, oh, we came out of Egypt to die because now we don't have any water, we don't have any food, right?
Right.
God took care of all their needs. Don't harden your hearts, as in the temptation in the wilderness. When your fathers tempted me, they proved me, they saw my works 40 years. Wherefore I was grieved with that generation and said, they do always err in their heart. They have not known my ways. So even though I saved them out of Egypt by the blood of the Lamb, and I baptized them into the Red Sea, and now they're in the wilderness, guess what? I swear in my wrath, they shall not enter into the land of Canaan. Is that what he says?
No rest.
He calls it the what?
Rest.
The rest. He had brought them out of the bondage of Egypt. He had tried them and tested them and put them through the wilderness so they could go up and kill the giants and take their land and rest. That is a shadow. That is a picture. That is a pattern in the Old Testament to make sure that you believe the truth, to test what you believe against the truth. So did every one of them that came out of Egypt get to enter into the rest?
No.
No. If you tempted him, right? You sinned, guess what? You did not get to what? Enter into the rest. Look what else he says. Let's go down a little bit farther in Hebrews 3, because Hebrews 3 and Hebrews 4 is telling you, think about what it's doing. The Old Testament is a pattern, right? The New Testament is explaining what the Old Testament, okay, let me show you this real quick. And I'll go from there. Y'all hear that?
I hear static bad.
Yeah. So the Old Testament acts what? It acts out God's truth, and the New Testament what? Explains God's truth. So when you're trying to explain God's truth to someone, but it doesn't match up to God the way God acted it out in the Old Testament, guess what? You need to question what you believe.
Right.
So that's why we're going to see, does our belief in the kingdom match up with what the Old Testament says? Now look what he says. While it is said today, look what he just said. He says this twice. He said it in Hebrews 7. Today, if you will hear his voice, do what? Harden not your voice. Harden not your hearts. Then he says it again in verse 15. While it is said today, if you will hear his voice, what? He wants you to understand this. He was asking you to listen to what he's trying to tell you. For some, when they had heard, it's the provocation. They did provoke, right? They provoked God to anger. Howbeit, not all that came out of Egypt by Moses, but with whom was he grieved 40 years? Was it not with them that had sinned, whose carcasses fell in the what?
Yes.
And to whom sware he that they should not enter into his what?
Rest.
So even though they were saved out of Egypt, they did not get to enter into the land of Canaan. They did not get to enjoy the rest. But to them that believe not. So we see that they, even though they were saved by the blood, they were baptized through the Red Sea, they could not enter into the rest because of what? Does God have you, listen, the rest is a picture of the kingdom. It's the seventh day. After 6,000 years, God's going to have a 1,000-year rest. It's called the kingdom. And you cannot enter into it if you don't believe that God has the power to change you guys. God through his word, God has the power to change you. All right, so now let's go ahead. Let's go from Hebrews 3 to Hebrews 4. Now look what he tells us, believers. Now look what he says. Let us, therefore, what?
Fear.
Lest a promise being left us of entering into his what?
Rest.
Any of you, that's talking about us, should seem to what?
Come short.
For unto us was the gospel preached as well as unto them. In other words, which gospel? Listen, He's talking about the gospel of the kingdom, right? He's saying that it was preached to them and it's preached to us. But guess what? The word preached to them did not what? Because they weren't mixed with faith. They didn't believe God. Even though they had seen everything God did to Pharaoh, even though they had seen the Red Sea, even though they had seen the manna, even though they had seen God bring in quails, even though they had seen water come out of a rock, guess what? They forgot those things. They did not believe they could kill the giants. He was preparing them to go get the rest.
Right.
For we which have believed do what? Do enter into rest. As have sworn in my wrath, if they shall enter into my rest, although the works were finished from the foundation of the world. For he spake in a certain place of, guess what? The seventh day on this wise. And God did rest the what? Seventh day from his works. That is the shadow. And in this place again, if they shall enter into my rest. Now look at this word. Seeing therefore, who's he talking to? Us. Who's he talking to? Let us, any of us or you should come short of it. So he's talking to us. Now look what he says. When God created the world, he rested on the seventh day. He called that the seventh day the rest. When those people didn't get into the land of Canaan, that was their inheritance, he called that the what? The rest. Now look what he says. Look what he says here. Seeing therefore it what? In other words, it hasn't happened yet. There remaineth that some must enter therein, and they to whom it was first preached entered not in because of unbelief. Again, he limited for a certain day, saying to David, today, after so long a time, as it is said, today, if you will hear his voice, here's the third time he said it, harden not your hearts. For if Jesus had given them rest, which means Jesus didn't give them what?
Right, rest.
They didn't give them rest. Now is not the day of rest, guys. We're in the sixth day.
Right.
Guess what you do on the sixth day, guys? How much manna do you gather on the sixth day?
I know for the next day.
Double, right?
Right.
We're living in the age where we should be gathering double manna.
Mm-hmm.
If Jesus had given them rest, then would he not afterward have spoken of what?
Mm-hmm.
Therefore, they're what?
Mm-hmm.
It hasn't happened yet. That 7,000 year, that millennial kingdom, that day of rest, there remains therefore a rest to who?
Gotcha.
Okay, so we know that kingdom is the seventh day. We know it's a day of rest. We know that many of these people were our examples. They did not get to enter in, right, to their rest, right? They came what? Remember what it says? They come short of it, right?
Right.
Now look what he tells us. Let us what?
Labor.
Let us work. Let us labor. Therefore, you know why? What's the purpose of working and laboring? To what?
Rest.
To enter into that kingdom, that rest. Lest any man fall after, what it says, these people that were in the wilderness that came saved out of Egypt, lest we fall after the same what?
Example.
They were our examples. The Old Testament. If you want to make sure you believe the truth, you have to test what you believe against the Old Testament. Does our belief match up with the Old Testament?
Yes.
So when you're sitting in a Baptist church and that pastor sitting up there and telling you you're saved forever, you got nothing to worry about, we're all going to get into the kingdom, does that picture match up with the shadow?
Mm-hmm.
Doesn't match up, does it?
No.
So you know that what they believe is a what?
Aye.
It's a lie. We just need to pray. We need to keep sharing with them. We need to pray that their eyes are opened up, or they're going to end up, because of unbelief, they're not going to get to what? Why could they not get into the land of Canaan? Can you remember? They could not enter in because of what?
Unbelief.
Of unbelief. If you don't believe that you can miss the kingdom, if you believe you're going to get in, and you don't have to what? Labor, you don't have to do anything to get in, then you don't believe God. So you're not going to enter in because of unbelief.
Right.
Now, look what he says in 1 Corinthians chapter 10. He says, Moreover, brethren, I would not that you should be ignorant how that all our fathers were under the cloud, and all passed through the sea. Remember, this is a picture, a pattern, a shadow, right? They were all baptized into Moses in the cloud and in the sea. And they did all eat the same spiritual meat and did all drink the same spiritual drink, for they drank of that spiritual rock that followed them. Talking about when they were in the wilderness, and that rock was Christ. That is a pattern. That is a what? Example. That is a shadow of the truth. Now look what he says. But with many of them, God was what? Not well pleased. You know why? They were overthrown. Did they get into the rest? No, they were what?
Over.
In the wilderness. Now look what it says. These things were our what?
Example.
Our examples, right? To the intent. Now here's what here's what I want y'all to understand. It is good that God has blessed us. There's a lot of people in this world, and me and Lewis have talked about this. There's a lot of people in this world, they like to go to the Bible and they like to say, 90% is mine and 10% I give 10% to the Lord. Let me tell you something.
All belongs to God.
100% of what you have belongs to the Lord.
Hmm.
Do you understand that?
Yes.
Not 10%. 100% belongs to the Lord.
Right.
We should never, ever lust after the things of this world.
Amen.
Listen, it's good that we have food. It's good that we have clothes. It's good that we have shelter. It's good that we have things that we can help other people with. It's good that we have money we can buy Bibles. It's good that we have money that we can help the sick and help the poor. But guess what? Don't ever get to the point where all you desire is worldly things. Because where your treasure is, guess what?
There's your heart.
There will your heart be also. We need to look, he tells you right here, these things were our example to the intent we should not lust after what? Evil things as they also lusted. Neither, look what he says, neither be ye what?
Idolaters.
The people in the wilderness were idolaters, as were some of them, as it is written. The people sat down to eat and drink and rose up to play. Neither let us what? Commit fornication, as some of them committed fornication. And guess what happened to them? They fell in one day 320,000. Neither let us, tempt Christ, as some of them. Those children in the wilderness, look what all they did. They were idolaters. They were what? They committed fornication. They tempted God. He says they were, guess what they were doing against God? They were murmuring. They were complaining. Don't murmur when you're going through hard times.
Amen.
As some of them also murmured, and guess what God did to them? They were destroyed. Now look at this, guys. All these things happen unto them. For what? And they are written for, guess what? Whose admonition? Look what admonition means, guys. To reclaim an offender. In other words, we have offended God. We have believed lies. We have not sought his kingdom with all our heart. We haven't done the things we're supposed to do. God wrote these things here, and that's why he says 3 times, he says, listen, if you have an ear to hear, don't harden your hearts, as in the time in the wilderness. Hear what the Spirit's saying to you, right?
Yes.
He is trying to, these were written for our admonition, to bring us back to God, to reclaim the what? An offender. We have offended him, and God is trying to bring us back to him. All those things that happened to those people in the wilderness, even though they were saved by the blood and baptized in the Red Sea, they were written to save people now. In other words, we have a lot of believers that are headed, and they're going to miss the kingdom, and they're going to get a portion with the unbelievers. And God wrote these things for their what? Their admonitions, so that he could what? Reclaim them. Because what did he say? What man having 100 sheep and one go astray, what does he do? He's trying to reclaim his sheep. guess what the devil has done? He's taken us captive at his will. He says, look what he says. All these things happen unto them for examples, and they are written for our admonition upon whom the ends of the world are come. Wherefore, since all these things are true, God, this is his conclusion. Let him that thinketh he standeth take heed lest he walk. That's what happened to them in the wilderness. They fell. They didn't think they had anything to worry about. They didn't think they were going to die. But you know what the problem was? They didn't believe God. Instead of, when they didn't have water, instead of getting on their knees and asking their father for water, guess what they did? They murmured. They complained, right? Listen, I can promise you guys, sometime in your life, you're going to go through a time where it's going to be hard. You have to understand who is putting you through that. He'll never leave you or what? Or forsake you. Now watch this. Now I want you to see. Look. These things were for our admonition. These things were for our examples. Look at a couple of things that these children in the wilderness did. Look what it says. They what? They were neither be ye want, as some of them. Neither let us what? Commit what? So fornication, that some of them that perished, that did not make it into the rest, were idolaters and fornicators, right? Watch this. They didn't get their inheritance because of those two things. Nay, he's writing to who? Believers at Corinth. Nay, you believers, y'all do wrong and you defraud, and that your brethren. You're doing it to other believers. Look what Paul says to them. Know you not that the unrighteous shall not what? Get there. You're going to lose your inheritance. And then he says, look at those words. Be not deceived. That's the same thing as him saying up here. Let him that thinketh he stand, what? Take heed. Don't be deceived. Look what he says. Neither what? Fornicators nor what? What did he say up here? They fell because they were what? Idolaters and what?
Fornicators.
They are your examples. If you are a believer and you're an idolater and a fornicator or an adulterer or effeminate or abuser with yourself and mankind, nor thieves, nor covetous, nor drunkards, nor revilers. Listen, revilers. You know what a reviler is, guys? It is someone who speaks to you with contemptuous language. You believe in the kingdom. I don't, and they mock you. Listen, be nice to them, but they're in trouble. Extortioner. Y'all know what an extortioner is? It's basically someone who blackmails you.
Right.
If you do any of these things as a believer, guess what? You shall not inherit the what?
Kingdom.
You're not going to inherit it. Don't deceive yourself. You're not going to get in. Do not deceive yourself. You will not get in. It is impossible for God to lie. And guess what he just told you? You do them, you're not getting in. And so, what I want y'all to get out of this lesson today is that the Old Testament acts out God's truth. All the stories you see, whether it's Jacob and Esau, or what happened to Joseph, or what happened to Daniel, or what happened to Jeremiah, all these are God acting out truth. And if your New Testament belief, right, does not match up to that, then what you believe is wrong.
Right.
It should match, because it's only a what? It's a shadow.
Right.
And if it's the shadow, the thing that is, the shadow should match up to the what? The real thing.
Right.
If the shadow's an elephant, it can't be a giraffe.
Mm-hmm.
So we are going to, that's what we're trying to do. We're going to try to correct some errors that we believe based upon the fact that God has given the Old Testament for what? An example, a pattern, and a shadow. And look what it says. It says Jesus Christ is the same. What? How much? Yesterday, today, and when?
Wherever.
If the Old and the New Testament are going to match up with one another. He says, I'm the Lord, I what? I change not. You can know absolutely whether you believe a truth or a lie based upon looking at the shadow, looking at the example.
Right.
He says, hold on. He says, there were false prophets also among the people. Right? They were. Even as they are what?
Oh,
So guess what? There have always been what? False prophets. Guess what there's going to be in our days? False what? Teachers. Who privily, they're going to bring in damnable heresies. You know what a damnable heresy? It's a lie that will get you out of the kingdom. Even denying, look at this. I should have, I'm going to do this real quick. Even what? They're going to even deny the Lord that bought them. Now, let me ask you a question. How in the world can you deny the Lord that bought you? You want me to show you? Watch this. Whosoever therefore shall confess me before men, him I will what?
Yes.
Before my Father. But whosoever shall deny me, I'm going to deny before my Father, right?
Right.
He said that, guess what he came to the world to do? To bring a sword, not peace.
Right.
Guess what truth does? It divides people.
Yes.
It divides families sometimes. Y'all, we've all experienced that, I think.
Amen.
It sets a man at variance against his father and against and his daughter against his mother and daughter-in-law against her mother-in-law, right? And the man's foe shall be, that's what truth does.
Right.
But you say, how in the world do these men deny the Lord that bought them? Well, he says, if you deny me, I will what? Deny you. And guess who Jesus is? Jesus saith unto him, I am the way, I am the what?
Truth.
When you deny truth, guess who you're denying? Christ. Because Christ is, he didn't say I know the truth. He says I am the what?
Truth.
I am the truth. When you deny truth, guys, you are denying the Lord that what? That bought you. And guess what they're going to do? When you deny truth, guess what you're going to do? You're going to bring upon yourself what? Swift destruction. And many, in the last days, many believers are going to follow these men who are bringing in these lies, men who are denying the Lord, denying truth. Guess what? Guess what most Christians are going to do in the last days? They're going to follow their what? They're going to follow after them. They're going to believe all these lies. And you know what these men are doing? By reason of whom, guess what they're doing? The way of truth shall be what? It's going to be evil spoken of. When I can tell, John will tell you this. When you talk about the kingdom, you know, people just receive it so gladly, don't they, John?
yeah.
Right.
No, they act like it's this evil doctrine that, oh, I can't believe you said that a Christian won't get into the kingdom. They get all upset.
That's not.
Mm.
They speak evil of that doctrine.
Yeah. Right.
That's what's going to happen in the last days, by reason of whom the way of truth shall be evil spoken of. And through covetousness, we know what covetousness is. Shall they with vain words, they're going to make merchandise of you. They will tell you whatever you want to hear so that they can make money.
Mm.
And guess what? Their judgment now of a long time lingereth not, and their damnation slumbereth not. And guess what he's going to say? Talking about these believers that are bringing in these damnable heresies, talking about these believers who are denying truth, talking about these believers who are leading people and they're following these pastors and believing all these lies. Guess what he says? If God spared not the angels that sin, but he cast them down to hell and delivered them into chains of darkness to be reserved unto judgment. And guess what? And he spared not the old world, right? Remember, these are shadows. These are patterns. He spared not the old world, but saved Noah, right? The eighth person a preacher of righteousness, bringing in the flood upon the world of the ungodly. Well, who did he destroy? Everybody but Noah and his family, right? If he didn't spare the angels and he didn't spare the world, right? And he turned the cities of Sodom and Gomorrah into ashes, condemned them with an overthrow, guess what he was doing? Making them an example unto those that after should live what? Noah, those angels, Sodom and Gomorrah are an example to believers that are going to live what? Try to live ungodly.
Mm-hmm.
He just delivered just Lot. He delivered just Noah. Vexed with the filthy conversation of the wicked, for that righteous man dwelling among them, in seeing and hearing, vexed his righteous soul from day to day with their unlawful deeds. The Lord knoweth how to deliver. You know that? He knows how to deliver you.
Amen.
He knows how to deliver the godly out of temptations. When you listen, if you go through a time in your life where you don't have food, don't curse God. Ask him. What father is going, if he asks an egg, is going to give his son a scorpion? God knows how to give good gifts to his children. Don't murmur, don't complain. Ask him. Guess what he'll do? He'll deliver you. And but he also knows how to reserve the unjust until the day of judgment to be what? To be punished. Those people in that wilderness, those people, all the stories that you read in the Old Testament are a picture, a pattern, a shadow of the truth. God doesn't change. He says, I am the truth. And that's what, guys, listen, ultimately, is that not what we're seeking after?
Yes.
We don't want to believe lies. We want the truth. He says in Proverbs, buy the truth and what? You know how valuable the truth is? It's more valuable than all the gold and the silver in the world.
Yeah.
You should get as much of it as you can. You should lay it up inside your heart and never give it away.
Mm-hmm.
You should never, ever compromise the truth. He says, then said Jesus to those Jews which believed on him, if you continue in my word, thy word is truth, right? If you continue in the truth, in the word, then are you my disciples indeed. And if you will, guys, and that's what we're going to do. When we get into these Old Testament pictures and shadows, we're trying to learn the deep things of God. And if you'll continue in that truth, in that word, you're going to know, you're going to what? He says, you shall know the what?
True.
And you know what that truth's going to do? It's going to deliver you. It's going to make you free from this world. You don't have to fear death. You don't have to fear what's going to happen to you when you stand at the judgment seat. Paul says, I finished my course. I know. On that, guess what the Lord's going to do on that day? The righteous judge, he's going to give me a crown. If you will endure to the end and you will do what you're supposed to, we are to seek truth. Look what he says. Run ye to and fro through the streets of Jerusalem and see now and know and seek in the broad places thereof. If you can find a man, if there be any that execute judgment, that, look what he says, that what?
Seek the truth.
Seek the truth. That's what God takes pleasure in believers who do what? Seek the truth. It is the glory of God to conceal, to hide something, to hide truth. But guess what? It is the honor of kings to do what?
Search it out.
Search out a matter, to seek the truth. That's what God desires. He wants you to dig through his word like you're digging in the ground for gold and silver. If you knew there was gold, John, if you knew there was gold under your house and it was 10 foot deep, right? It was directly under your living room floor and you knew it was there, and it might take you a little while to get to it, but guess what you're going to do? You're going to dig, ain't you?
Yeah.
That's what he wants you. That's the desire he wants you to have about truth. See, you don't know if there's gold under your floor, but you do know that there's truth in God's word.
Amen.
So your digging will never come up unprofitable. If you dig, guess what he's going to continue to do? He'll give you truth. And guess what you do with that truth? Sell it not.
No.
Hold on to it. Desire more truth. He says, in that day shall this song be sung in the land of Judah. We have a strong city. Salvation will God appoint for walls and bulwarks. Open ye the gates, that the righteous nation. Look what he's saying. I think he's talking about the kingdom here. Open ye the gates, that the righteous nation, which does what? May enter in. God wants you to seek out truth. He wants you to share truth, and he wants you to be obedient to the truth. He says, thou wilt keep him in perfect peace. He which keepeth the truth will have perfect peace, whose mind is stayed on thee. Listen, don't take your eyes off the Lord. Don't look at the wind. Don't look at the waves. Don't allow yourself to start sinking into the sea. Keep your eyes what? Keep your mind what? Stayed on him, because he trusteth in thee. Trust ye in the Lord forever, for in the Lord Jehovah is everlasting strength. And so we'll close with this verse. These are believers, and this is what they think of the truth. It says that with all deceivableness of unrighteousness, because people who are living unrighteously, guess what they're going to be? They're going to be deceived. With all deceivableness of unrighteousness in them that what? Perish. You know why they're going to perish? You know why these believers are going to perish? Because they receive not the love of what?
Truth.
The truth. That they might be saved. He's not talking about believing upon Jesus, and he's talking about getting into the kingdom. He's about fear not man who can destroy the body, but fear him who can destroy body. He's saving your soul. God wants to save us. He's not just trying to deliver you out of Egypt. He's trying to save you into a land of rest. He says, and for this cause, because they didn't receive the love of the truth, for that cause, God shall send them a strong delusion that they should believe, guess what?
Not that.
If you don't want the truth, God will allow you to believe a what?
Lie.
That they all might be damned who believe not the what?
Truth.
But had pleasure in unrighteousness. But we are bound to give thanks always to God for you, brethren, beloved of our Lord. You know why we're giving thanks? Because God hath from the beginning chosen you to salvation through sanctification, purification, being cleaned of the Spirit. And this is how he's going to save you. Through sanctification of the Spirit, and guess what? Belief of the truth. We don't want to believe lies. We don't want God to send us a what? Strong delusion because we want the truth. We want to receive the truth, the love of the truth, that we might be saved, guys. All right, so questions?
Okay.